Another Friday means another Mailbag Friday. Let's get to those questions next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. And you can always find us on wherever you listen to your podcast. That can be all those streaming apps, and you can also find us on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If this is your first ever episode you're tuning into, as I've said all week long, this is the best time to be tuning into this podcast because we're heading down to Surprise, Arizona tomorrow. We'll bring you a few days of full access, great coverage for pitchers and catchers reporting and spring training beginning. The first full squad is on Monday. We'll be bringing you episodes on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Going to have lots to go over next week. And should have some interviews that I'll try to post as well, though those might just be audio and not video because I won't be able to set up a camera while we're down there. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. We got about 30 questions to get to, and if you're wondering how you can send in questions each and every week, either respond to one of the videos from this week in the comment page below, or you can just send them straight to my Twitter handle at JohnnyJ_15. You can see it down there in the bottom left if you're watching on YouTube. If not, it's at JOHNYJ_15. Respond to the tweet I put out on Thursday night, or you can just direct message me, and I'll be sure to answer them in this podcast episode. But let's kick things off here on YouTube. First question is going to come from Mark. This may be a better question for Mailbag Friday, but what do you think it would take for the Royals to go get Cedric Mullins from the Orioles? It wouldn't be as complicated as it would have been a few years ago when he was an all-star and he was one of the main pieces to that Orioles lineup. I still have my doubts that they're going to be able to get a move like that done. Cedric Mullins being a center fielder himself, if the Royals are going to make a trade, I would guess it's going to be for a left or a right fielder and somebody that plays that position a lot because Michael Massey's going to be playing a little bit of left field. Might see Jonathan India out there. I believe Michael Garcia will get some outfield work as well. So having somebody who can handle themselves in left field and bring some more thump to the lineup would be a huge upgrade for the lineup. And Mullins being a top-of-the-order bat, I know that Baltimore hit him down toward the bottom, I think 8 and 9 in the postseason. He's somebody that would give you the upgrade at the bottom of the order, but the top of the lineup for Kansas City is already shored up with the top 4 guys there, maybe even the top 5 guys in Kansas City's lineup. But I will say this, not as complicated as it would have been about 2 or 3 years ago, so I could see a deal like that happening if the Royals were truly interested. The unfortunate reality is I'm not sure they're that interested to begin with when it comes to Cedric Mullins. Good question, though, coming from Mark. This one comes from Don't Worry About It. Any update on Asa Lacy or Gavin Cross making improvements? Gavin Cross going to camp this year should have a really good chance to showcase himself, to make a run for one of the outfield spots or maybe one of the bench spots. I believe he's going to start the year in AAA. That's my guess as to right now, mainly because there's a few more guys ahead of him. And since he's always dealt with some form of injury or setback in his career, putting him on a big league roster to begin the year, I would consider it very unlikely at this point in time. You get to someone like Asa Lacy, there's not much on him. And if he's healthy, I would be ecstatic to see what he looks like. I would be ecstatic to know some insight when I head down to Surprise on if he's made any progress this offseason. Just a guy that's been bitten by the injury bug. I hope nothing but a full season of health for Asa Lacy. Even if he struggles, it would be great to see him out there on the mound. But unfortunately, not much to report on when it comes to Asa Lacy. This one is coming from, looks like, that actually might do it for all the questions we have on. Actually, one more coming from Brian. If Hunter Renfroe is healthy and is in a contract year, what are the chances he can be the middle of the order bat we thought we signed? I mean, Hunter Renfroe in the month of May and June last year was one of the top contributors in the lineup. And I could see a world in which that type of Hunter Renfroe is playing in the Royals lineup for a couple of months. It was the injuries that set him back in 2024. He's also dealt with injuries now the last handful of seasons, and that's going to be another concern going into this year, even if he's 100% healthy when they leave camp at the end of March. But it's not a stretch to believe that he could be the middle of the order answer. If I was to pick between Melendez and Renfroe, I'm going to say Melendez could be that answer to the middle of the order bat, not because of past numbers. Hunter Renfroe's got that edge on him, but Melendez is younger. And when I'm banking on a bounce back player, I will always go with the younger player over the guy that's over the age of 30. And Melendez, at his age, he could be having a career year. He also could follow up what he did last year with an even worse one. That's just the tough part about baseball. It's never a sure thing. But for Renfroe, if he stays healthy and he doesn't get off to as bad of a start as he had in April last year, I don't think he's going to be a liability in that lineup. If anything, I think he can be a league average bat or slightly better. Okay, now we're going to jump over to Twitter. Thanks to all that answered or asked those questions over on YouTube. And again, you can always leave them on any episode that we post throughout the week. I will get that notification. First one on Twitter, as soon as this thing refreshes, comes from Brennan. Could Drew Waters make the opening day roster over Joey Wiemer? If Drew Waters has a really good camp and Joey Wiemer bottoms out and looks borderline unplayable, I could see a world in which that happens because Drew Waters is a good defensive outfielder. Problem is, Drew Waters had a really good spring training last year, and the Royals still picked Nelson Velasquez and Dairon Blanco over him. I don't see how Drew Waters really fits into this roster in 2025. I hope he gets a shot somewhere, and it would be a great thing for him to catch on with the Royals, but there's clearly something that doesn't match up well. Otherwise, he would have gotten multiple opportunities last year when the Royals offense was struggling so much because he was hitting well in AAA Omaha, but they never really called him up. They gave him one opportunity in late June, didn't do enough with it. I got Joey Wiemer and Dairon Blanco being the outfielders breaking camp with the team, but if Joey Wiemer were to get hurt or completely bottom out, Drew Waters could grab a spot in camp with a really, really strong showing, but it's going to have to be a really strong showing. I can't emphasize that enough because last year I thought he looked damn good in spring training. This one comes from Bobby Witt Jr.'s bat, 25 bombs for MJ this year. Glad there's going to be a couple questions about MJ because everybody's talking about this new stance. Annie Rogers had a great video yesterday down in Surprise. It's a completely altered stance. The hand placement's different. He's got more of a closed stance. The leg kick, that giant leg kick, is gone. I'm curious to see where that takes him and if this channels more power or turns him into more of a contact hitter. To have more of a smooth approach, a more compact swing, it should be able to help him, but I'll take the under on 25 home runs. Don't see him having the year that he did last year and then having that type of career year. I think you should just hope for MJ Melendez to be a 250 hitter, a 310 OBP guy, run into 15 home runs, and be, as I said with Renfroe, a league average bat. That would go a long way in improving this lineup. But I'm sure we'll get a lot more questions about MJ throughout the next couple of Mailbag Fridays. Ben's question is, would you rather have Bobby Witt or Ohtani for the next 5 years? It's such a great question, and Ohtani being a pitcher is going to impact my decision. I go back and forth all the time with this, and it's a nod to how great Bobby Witt Jr. is. Shohei Ohtani has that ability to win an MVP, win a Cy Young, be a Silver Slugger. All of those things make him a generational talent. So for that reason, I would go Shohei Ohtani by a narrow margin. Bobby Witt Jr., though, all-around player. It's really just unfortunate he doesn't pitch. But as a position player and a hitter, I would take Bobby Witt Jr. for the rest of his career over Shohei Ohtani. But the fact Ohtani's not just a pitcher, but one of the best pitchers in the game and one of the best hitters in the game, I just can't go against that. Ohtani is going to be maybe the best player that we ever see in baseball because you know how hard it is to be that good at two different spots. We think about a two-way player. It would be incredible if Bobby Witt Jr.'s pitchability was comparable to Alec Marsh. And that's no disrespect for Alec Marsh. But if Bobby Witt Jr. could throw 150 innings with like a 4.4 ERA, that would be unbelievable. But the fact that Ohtani can win a Cy Young at that spot and be one of the best hitters in baseball, I would probably go with Shohei Ohtani by a very, very slim margin. Good question, though. I would love to hear a lot of people's comments on YouTube after this episode is posted. Let's get to one more here before we hit our first break. Eli's question, I'm sorry about the driving ticket. He says, got my first driving ticket while listening to your podcast. Anyways, Do you think they just ride with MJ and look to address the outfield at the deadline when the Angels or A's are out of it? Well, yeah, first and foremost, I've gotten a few speeding tickets in my lifetime, a couple taillights being out. So hopefully the fine wasn't too bad. Hopefully it was just 10 miles over the speed limit. You can definitely let me know. But hopefully it wasn't too bad because you were listening to my podcast and getting too invested, because I didn't think I was saying anything too groundbreaking. But I hope all is well there. When it comes to MJ, JJ Piccolo called in the most perplexing player at the season in review press conference going back to November. And I agree with that statement because everything he does off the field, everything leading up to the game, seems like he should be a great player when the lights turn on and you're actually playing in a major league game. Just hasn't happened for him just yet. But if they don't strike a deal through trade and spring training, which I'm still holding out hope they can find something there, they absolutely will try to address it at the deadline if there is a serious hole in the outfield. If Renfroe's a league average bat and MJ's having a career year and Kyle Isbell's doing just fine in center, there might not be a need to do that. But that feels really unlikely, does it not? I expect if they're in it, they will try to trade for a bat and maybe one of those guys that they were really pushing for in the offseason. But when teams are out of it and they know they got to get prospects in return, that would be the perfect time to pounce right around the deadline. Okay, let's take our first break of the show. When we come back, still a lot of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our one and only sponsor today in FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For my pick, I'll go college basketball. 2 local teams playing late tomorrow night in Utah. K-State playing BYU. KU playing in Utah, both road games for the local teams here in Kansas City. I'll take the money line for both KU and K-State to win on Saturday night. Our next set of questions here is going to start with Chris. Would Nolan Arenado be an option if available? If not, how about Alec Boehm? It was very clear early on that Alec Boehm's asking price was ridiculous. When I heard that the Phillies were asking for Logan Gilbert and I think it was Logan Gilbert and George Kirby for Alec Boehm, you went, that deal's not going to happen. And if that's the asking price for Alec Boehm, the Royals are certainly not going to make that move. So Alec Boehm, I believe he's going to stay in Philadelphia. They're going to ask for the moon for him. They're going to be in it by the deadline. I'll see them being buyers more so than sellers. With Nolan Arenado, that is an interesting one because it was reported about a month ago that the Royals were interested in Nolan Arenado at the deadline. And with him wanting a trade and having this no trade clause, there was a Cardinals reporter that mentioned Kansas City again as one of those teams that he was going to veto. But if he really wanted to get traded, he would have to lift that no trade clause to get traded somewhere. And if that was Kansas City, maybe that would be the best fit. But now the more we're hearing about it and the closer we're getting to the start of spring training when games are actually being played, I'd imagine the Cardinals will just wait till the deadline. I don't see the Cardinals being in it at the trade deadline in terms of being a buying team. That might be another opportunity to go out there and strike to see what Nolan Arenado did in the first half. If he's having a great season, asking price might be too high. But if he's having another average season, maybe that could be a world in which the Royals would strike again to give them an impact bat for a late postseason push. But Nolan Arenado right now, I'd imagine he will be a Cardinal come opening day in late March. Devin's question is Bobby Witt Jr. going to be the MVP in 2025? He's got my vote. Aaron Judge making it back-to-back years feels unlikely to me just because that was a ridiculous season that he put together, a Barry Bonds-esque type season, and Bobby Witt Jr. to me is only going to get better. And if the Royals win that division and Bobby puts together similar numbers, I don't see Aaron Judge putting together similar numbers that he did last year. Eventually, one of those guys is going to surpass the other, and I got Bobby Witt Jr. as the one that's going to surpass Aaron Judge at some point in the season and not relinquish that spot. So I'm going to go yes. I do believe Bobby Witt Jr. is going to win the MVP in 2025. And when you see a lot of these preseason predictions, it ain't going to be just me. I feel like a lot of national reporters out there, national broadcasters are going to pick Bobby Witt Jr. as their 2025 MVP. RB Carr's question is, which out-of-option players do you expect to get DFA'd? I would need to do a deeper dive into the guys that are out of options. Chris Stratton, I believe, is out of options. That, to me, is by far and away number one. I'm not sold he's making the roster at all, even with a strong spring. The bullpen's just too crowded. I went over my prediction a few episodes ago. Chris Stratton's not in that bullpen for 2025. So he's one of those guys that I do think makes a lot of sense to be let go in camp. I'm trying to think. Nick Prado is another name. He is out of options. I don't see him making camp with the team. Maybe he does return on a minor league deal after camp, but no, I don't see Nick Lofton, and I want to say Drew Waters is out of options as well. He's another name to keep an eye on. So those three, off the top of my head, maybe I am wrong on one of them that they do have an option, but of those three, those feel like the likeliest DFA candidates once the team leaves surprise in the last part of March. Jerry's question is, with the offers we made to some power hitters that weren't successful, do you think that the size of Kauffman Stadium is part of the reason why these power hitters aren't signing with the Royals? I don't believe so, because power hitters have that ego of no matter which park I'm in, it can't contain me. If you're asking about a different player who had his numbers really inflated, like a Yankees player or an Astros player that turned a 15-ish home run season into a 30-35 home run season, then yes, it would impact. But when you're talking about Anthony Santander or a Pete Alonso, those guys aren't going to be held in by any ballpark, even Kauffman Stadium's dimensions out there. So those power hitters with the egos they have, and I'm not saying that in a negative light. I'm saying they got the confidence that they can put the ball 450 feet anywhere. You could put him at the Polo Grounds and hit it to dead center field where it's 500 plus, and they still would have that confidence. So I don't think it deters them at all. If they're a true power hitter, they're not scared of any ballpark out there. They're just looking for the best possible offer for them. Craig's question is, how much will it cost to stream games this year? Still waiting on that Amazon Prime package. The Royals already do that MLB.com deal that the Guardians were putting out there and the Twins were. It just comes down to blackouts and which regions you're in. But hopefully, at some point in the early portion of spring training, we're going to get that subscription package from Amazon Prime. I've gotten a lot of questions on the Bally app. The Bally app is now the FanDuel Sports app. It's the exact same thing, should be the exact same price. And how you watched them last year, you'll be able to do the exact same thing through that app. But I know a lot more people are interested on the Amazon Prime deal. I'm still waiting on that. I got no new word on that. But as soon as I do know, as soon as it becomes public, I will definitely let everybody know what that price would be. This one comes from Keep It Profile Pick. If they had to make a move for another power bat, who could you see them bringing in? There's just not a lot of options left out there in free agency. Adam Duvall is a power bat. He's just 36. Verdugo and Canna, they're no longer power bats. Anthony Rizzo's not much of a power bat anymore. It would have to be the trade route, and there's just not many names out there left. My favorite trade candidate, because I thought he was going to get moved this offseason, was Lamont Wade Jr. for the Giants. Great on-base numbers, incredible walk rate, and has a little bit of pop to his bat. Hit 2 home runs against the Royals in that final series at Kauffman Stadium in September. He's not going to have a 30 home run season, anything like that, but I could see a 15 to 20 home run season and a really high on-base number. He would be my guy to just continuously check in on, but I don't know if the Giants are willing to move him in the middle portion of spring training. We'll see, though. Still holding out hope, as I've said numerous times, that the Royals do trade for a bat and bring in somebody that can give them some serious depth for the lineup. Jennifer's question is, can we still get all the games on Bally? So that goes hand in hand with what I just said. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, network, whatever it's called, that's Bally this year. They just rebranded. So if you watch them on Bally, that's what the app turned into. I looked on my Roku a few days ago, and that's what it looks like on my Roku screen. So you would have that. If you're still paying the subscription, it should be the exact same thing, unless I'm missing something completely. So always respond if you're not seeing the same thing. But if you watched them on Bally last year, Bally's just now the FanDuel Sports Network that Royals games will be broadcasted on as well. But still holding out hope that Amazon Prime deal is a little bit better. Waka off-season's question is confidence level in still acquiring an outfield bat. My confidence level has gone down before the first full squad workout on Monday. I am still confident that in spring training, and that maybe is hypocritical of me because when I've been asked this question, I've said J.J. Picola likes to have his team in place by the time the full squad workout happens. In the next few days, 2 or 3 days here before that happens, and even a lot of the guys are already down there, I do not see a deal happening. But then again, a lot of the deals they've made this offseason have come out of the blue. I do not see them leaving Surprise Arizona without a new bat that has been brought in, whether that be a one-year deal, a minor league deal, somebody to lengthen out the lineup. There are options out there, and I'd imagine they still want to go the trade route. So my confidence level before the end of spring training, I will say 80%. My confidence level before the first full squad workout on Monday is now down to about 10 to 20%. Nothing too crazy there. Maybe they can strike a deal. Maybe they're working on something as I'm recording this podcast episode. But to me, still feels like a little bit of a long shot because of how bad the trade market has been, how stale it's been. Don't expect it to happen this weekend. Probably the focus now is getting everybody down safely to camp and beginning that first full squad workout. Okay, we're going to wrap up our final segment here with about 10 to 15 questions. So we'll take our final break here. You're listening to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. You are tuned in to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Our next set of questions begins with Noah. With all free agent outfielders basically gone, who is the most realistic pickup that the Royals could still go out there and get, whether that be by trade or a free agent signing, and what is left? My options are now down to the 3 free agents that I've been continuously bringing up in some episodes. Mark Canha being an option, Alex Verdugo being another option, and Adam Duvall. Those 3 feel like likely candidates because they're cheap, and the longer they wait through spring training, the cheaper they are going to be. Trade market's a lot different. Unfortunately, I do have to say I have no idea who still is being shopped out there. We know some of the names that were being shopped all the way back to the winter meetings. Nothing's happened, though, since then. And that makes me think that those teams are going to hold on to those players at least until the trade deadline. So I'll stick with Canha, Verdugo, and Adam Duvall as the likeliest options to be a Royal by the end of spring training. Justice for Gap's question is, what are the chances that one of the 3 outfielders, Melendez, Velasquez, and Weimer, improve or break out? I think very likely. If one of those 3, that feels like a really good chance that they're going to have maybe a career year. For Melendez, that would be the best case scenario. But I did see from Alex Duvall on Twitter, I've loved his content since the Royals Farm Report days, but bringing up, MJ Melendez and Nelson Velasquez putting together like a 250, 310 OBP season with 15 home runs apiece, that could do wonders for this lineup. And I totally agree with that statement. I think it's a great pick. But Joey Weimer is somebody I'm really keeping my eye on. It wouldn't surprise me with a strong spring and a strong start to the season if we could see him starting a lot of games in center field in 2025. Elijah's question, is there any world that Isbel loses his spot in center to someone? I know he's a great defensively, but his bat is below average at best. Perfect. That question comes right after the one I just answered. Yes, there is a world in which he loses his spot, not out of spring training, but at some point in the season, absolutely. If Joey Weimer comes on strong, or somebody like Maikel Garcia plays very well defensively in center field, which I think they're going to give him some run out there. Those are 2 options that could take his spot in center field. And who knows, maybe they do acquire a bat that can play a little bit of center field as well. But that is absolutely a possibility, considering this being a year where they're not going to just run him out there every single day. Kingdom Cave's question is, how many games till people are wanting Q gone for Ned? I don't want him gone. I just want to know when people overreact. It'll be the first week of the season. We all know that to be the case. I mean, last year the Royals had a career turnaround. Quatrero had a career turnaround, and they had an extraordinary season, an unbelievable turnaround that hadn't been seen many times in Major League Baseball history. And still in September, I had people talking about firing Q and moving on from him. It'll happen nearly every single game, it feels like, unless they win it in 2025. That's the way it goes with managers. That's the job they have. When you do something well and you win a game, you're praised. You do something stupid the next day, you make the wrong move, people want you gone. But Ned Yost, he's not managing again. He is just there to be involved in the organization, be a part of baseball again, and I'm glad the Royals were able to do that for him. Bears question is, does Tyler Gentry have a shot at making the team? I'd say doubtful at this point. The outfield options, the bench options come down to Dairon Blanco, Nelson Velasquez, and Joey Weimer. Tyler Gentry, even with a strong spring, I'd imagine they're going to begin the year with him in Omaha. Brick's question is, at what point in the season do we try and trade for another outfielder? If they don't get one before the start of the regular season, look for July. July would be a time, if the Royals are still in it, to go out there and get another outfield bat to lengthen out this lineup. But I still believe that a bat is going to be brought in at some point in spring training so they can have some insurance for guys like MJ Melendez, Kyle Isbell, and Hunter Renfroe. Mike's question is the replacement for the Hampton Frazier, the winner of the Lofton and Biggio spot in camp, or is there a potential wild card in that battle? Lofton and Biggio might be battling it out for one of those final spots. My roster projection has Cavan Biggio because he's done it a little bit longer at the big league level, but with a strong camp from Nick Lofton. They love Nick Lofton, so I could see him winning that job as well. But I'll agree with you there, Mike. The Garrett Hampson spot probably comes down to the winner of Lofton and Biggio in camp. My guess is Biggio. Not going to be shocked at all if it's Nick Lofton winning it in camp. Jamie's question, does this upcoming season's bullpen bring back any 2015 playoff vibes, comparing HGH to Estevez, Harvey, and Ursig? And where do you rank the Royals bullpen in the MLB? Trevor May had them at 4. Oh, that's high praise from former Twin, former A, Trevor May. Love listening to his stuff as well. They're not HDH just because Herrera, Davis, and Holland coming off 2014 were seen as some of the top 3 closers in the entire sport. So they're not there yet. Ursig and Harvey have that type of upside. That's how high I am on Hunter Harvey if he does stay healthy. They could be really good. I would go top 4 in American League. I don't know if I would say top 4 in all of baseball. That is tremendous praise from Trevor May. As of right now, I am going to place them as the 10th best bullpen in baseball with the upside of maybe getting into the top 5 with a strong start to the season. But love that Trevor May, a former reliever himself, has those guys placed there. Next question is, spring training stats don't guarantee anything in the regular season, but who are 5 players you'll be paying the most attention to in surprise, performance-wise or otherwise? MJ Melendez because of the new stance, Joey Weimer number 2, Nelson Velasquez battling it out for a spot, Michael Massey because I think he could go hand in hand with maybe a breakout season, carrying that confidence into the regular season, even though those stats don't matter. Want to see him have a strong spring. And the 5th option there, I'm going to go on the pitching side of things. I want to see how Chris Bubich looks starting some games if that swing and miss is still there. So those 5 guys are the ones I'm going to be keeping an eye on at the beginning of spring training. This one comes from DMB. With the pen expected to be better from the jump, could this mitigate some of the slight regression we expect from Lugo and Waka and possibly see a repeat of numbers due to not needing them to go so deeply into every game? That's an exact point I was trying to make a little bit ago was don't be too scared of the regression if the bullpen significantly improves, because you're not asking Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans and Waka to go 7 every single night. Give a strong 5 or 6 and turn it over to a bullpen that is hopefully much, much better in 2025, which I expect them to be, by the way. So your point is spot on. Fans should not be scared of regression if that bullpen comes on strong, and I do imagine they're going to have a strong start to the season with a lot of the arms they're returning and the arms that they have brought in. Jason asked, basing what the teams in our division have on paper, not counting possible injuries, which team in the division do you think is going to be the biggest problem? It would be Detroit if they got Bregman, as I said in yesterday's episode. I'm not going to count out Cleveland, though. Cleveland's a team that if you start doubting them, they prove you wrong and make you look stupid every single time. That bullpen's ridiculous. The Royals always struggle with the Guardians in Cleveland. They're the division champs. They're the reigning division champs and won 95-plus games last season. That's just a team I'm not willing to say they're going to be terrible this year. Even though they overachieved in a lot of different areas, their rotation is going to have Shane Bieber back, and they always have some young prospect come up and play really well. My vote for that is Kyle Manzardo. Played a little bit in the postseason. He should be able to replace a little bit of that production that Josh Naylor left and go into Arizona in that trade. But they subtracted. I'm just not counting out Cleveland. They're still the team that I am most fearful of. Aiden's question is from the 2024 draft class, who is most likely to get an extension. Too early to tell on some of those high school arms. David Shields is somebody I like a lot and has tremendous upside. He's just 17, 18 years old, so who knows what he's going to look like early on in his career. the easy pick here, I hate to have a cop-out answer, but it's Jack Caglione. If Jack Caglione comes up this year and starts playing really well, he might get an extension as early as this coming off season. That's how high they are on him. That's how I am on Jack Caglione, but he'll be my pick to get an extension from the 2024 draft class. And lastly, Royals Data Dugout asks, how many games should Sal catch in 2025? He's been at 90 each of the past 2 seasons. Should Q keep cutting back on his duties behind the dish, or is 90-ish the sweet spot? It'll be tough to move Salvador Perez off of the catcher's position because of how badly Salvi wants to catch, but him becoming a fine first baseman and how much Salvi loves to play first base, I'd bring that down to 80. Every year he plays, that number has to go down. So from 90, I would like him to catch 80, make it about half the time. Freddie Fermin's great behind the plate. Salvi can play first. Vinny can DH. They can flip-flop. Keep him as fresh as possible if you want those offensive numbers to stay the same or improve at his age 35, 36 season. Okay, that's going to do it for another edition of Mailbag Friday on Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're heading off to Surprise tomorrow, but you don't have to wait until Monday for some content. We'll be out there Sunday. I'll have tons of video, tons of interviews, and another episode as to what I saw on that Sunday practice. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.